Today's Nugget of Zen. Brought to you by Good Morning Drumtopia, which is a special segment of the almost daily Zencast. Hello and namaste. At home, under increasingly almost tyrannical sort of government order, question mark? I am your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Thank you for tuning in, friends. As always, I'm here to entertain you and help you pass the time during this intense global lockdown. Today's super short segment, your daily nugget of Zen. You could not have planned a better staycation for Zenification. If you had asked me 3.5, 4 years ago, before Trump was on anybody's radar for wanting to be king of America, whatever. I did that in the wrong order for comedy's sake. Long before all of this Trumtopian madness began, I was publicly advocating for a stay-at-home meditation protest. I was like, that would just punch him in the balls, kind of, financially. If we picked a sector and said, you know what, guys, as a tribe, as a species that sees the alarm bells ringing and feels the calling towards healing, we're going to sit at home, meditate, learn to meditate and zen the fuck out. And we're going to not give any money as a collective, as a plurality approaching a majority, if not a totality, to X, Y, and Z industries. Like, I don't know. I want to punch it to Big Pharma, but I'm also not going to ever, in good conscience and sober, ask sick people to not buy their medicine. But one thing you could do is, like, in terms of logical thinking as a planned thing, like, you can get everybody who was on a bunch of big pharma meds, have them first research, like, diet things that might help them get off some of those meds a little bit, like the real ones, because there are. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, folks. If you change your diet, you will change your health. I'm a horrible living example of exactly what's wrong with everybody. Right? Like, I have eaten really well and healthy. And I didn't have to be vegan, but it was definitely plant-based, as they say. The gravitas being, and that we are, by evolutionary design, whether or not you believe in that or not, by fact of the matter of how we came about, there are some things that are kind of like hardwired into the fractal, right? That are not contingent so much on belief as they are on just the act of manifesting in and of itself. But I digress. This is supposed to be one of those clean, samurai sword-like, cut through the bullshit episodes. You could not have planned. I could not have planned a better, sudden, unavoidable, you didn't even have to talk anyone into it, opportunity. And here we are. I've been hinting at it, but I humbly invite you now, dear listeners and friends, to install, and I swear to you, this is not an ad campaign from any particular meditation app. Although, curiously, on the news channels that I flip through, there's been a noticeable increase in meditation app advertising. Go meditation, corporate, free market meditation movement. Eek. The universe works in mysterious ways. And the universe has, through the confluence of human action, brought about these circumstances. And it is not lost on me. And if it is lost on anyone out there listening, it should be something you check into, because it's going to come up in your meditation if you take me serious and jump in. But there are people suffering because of the current situation. And we do our best to help those around us that we know and love, and we do our best to try to be charitable if we're in a position to be such, to help those we don't know and technically don't love. But we are in unprecedented times. And we've been overusing that word since Trump rode down a golden escalator from his golden castle in the sky where he literally shits on a gold plate toilet and, began this entire Trumptopian adventure. Here we are now, though. And if we honor all those people's suffering, especially, if you're in a position to be consuming entertainment media and in the luxury, I don't know who's listening, right? Because I get some interesting analytics, but I'm not paying for the big, massive, impressive account where I could produce 24-hour radio from my iPad. I might someday, if this generates income for me and I can hire people, that'd be awesome. I wish I had already filed some sort of business license and had hired some people like 6 months ago so I could be applying for forgivable SBA loans to upgrade the whole enterprise. But I'm not. And if you're in America and you're a small business owner and you're listening to the sound of my voice now and you have not realized that there really is a program to help your business, go to SBA.gov and apply. And then if they don't help you, write a sternly worded letter to Donald Trump. He is the president. Love him or hate him. The universe has conspired to force us into some tough love lockdown. And people are suffering on all kinds of weird levels, right? I have to be deeply, humbly grateful for the fact that I am in, by some people's real life living standards, practically luxurious conditions. I don't think of it as luxurious because I know what luxury is, right? I'm not in a $3,000 a night hotel suite. Some people are. Some people are toughing this shit out in their favorite hotel, in their favorite fancy city. And believe it or not, no matter how much money those kinds of people may or may not have, they too are suffering. Because here's the real nugget of Zen, folks, for this episode. The deep, tragic, dark truth. Every individual in the human species is suffering. And some of it is nonsensical bullshit mental suffering, but it is suffering nonetheless. And I don't mean to minimize anyone's mental bullshit suffering, you know what I'm saying? But people will. Some of it is causality caused, causal material suffering, want of more luxury, of not having enough luxury at any scale. I am a paycheck to paycheck technical artist, right? I'm a technician for the artistry of theater. That's my real life day job. Judge me, love it, hate it, whatever. I don't give a fuck. My point is, it never felt like I was poor because I got by, right? And I'm a humble person. I don't need Lamborghinis and private jets. If I had access to that through artistic income of my own creating, would I use it? Maybe. For altruistic goals? Absolutely. Regardless. I could be in better situation, right? I can imagine it. And if I can imagine it, it will impact my energy, my emotions, my mentality, my feelings, which, may or may not be different things from emotions. And I could be causing my own suffering from it. I'm incredibly grateful and express gratitude. And that's something we all need to be doing. Whether you're listening to this in the lap of luxury and suffering through the tedium and the psychological stress of today's current ongoing endurance situation, or if you are in the humblest of conditions and humbly surviving and suffering your own real life pain from your own real life sufferings that are probably, different than others. Everyone's own unique suffering is real, right? Everyone's emotions are valid, whether we agree with them or not. And whatever your theory about why we are in this situation might be, set it aside. Do not waste this opportunity. Reinvestigate your spiritual tradition, whatever it is. Surprise, surprise, whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew, or some other flavor, the roots of your tradition have deep, mystical, esoteric ingredients that you may or may not have been aware of. Whichever your God is, everyone's God is asking them, inviting them quietly, subtly, deep within, in the pockets and the recesses. I like this phrase. It's not common anymore. It's from a turn of the century, a couple of turn of the centuries ago. But in the cockles of my heart. I like it because that phrase, if you say it earnestly, and it's not a dirty word, right? It's a meaningful, beautiful place. It's a deep, deep inside, whatever your heart is, in the center bits of it. But it's a silly sounding word, cockles. It makes everybody giggle. And maybe in today's climate it might seem bordering on, and if not inadvertently crossing some sort of PC line, but while I appreciate respect and appropriate / noble use of language, I also don't deal in policing and judgment of anyone's language. Like, speak how you will. If others judge you, that's a thing for forgiveness, right? I digress. All of our deities, whom I humbly propose to you, may be existent, conscious, focus, energy points brought into manifestation in part by our own attribution of belief in them. So imaginary friends that are real nonetheless, that don't operate the way our cartoon, watered-down versions we've been presented to in recent days and times, they aren't quite like that. But they're out there and they are working through historical events. Let us not get distracted by arguing about what divinity is doing, but rather find that place that in the Christian tradition, curiously, despite if you take a survey of 500,000 run-of-the-mill, on-the-street Joe Schmo American Christians, they'd be like, no way in hell is meditation a part of my Christian religion. But right there in the Bible, be still and know I am. What on earth does it mean for God Almighty itself, herself, himself? What does it mean for it to say, be still? What do you say to a child when it's being rambunctious and bordering on uncontrollable and causing chaos and damage in your home? Child, be still. Now, I don't think God is a jealous God. I could be wrong. I've done my research. I've come to my conclusions. I don't need to validate them to anybody. I'm encouraging you to think along the lines I propose and then question your response and reaction. Maybe even investigate. Test it like a meditation scientist. I humbly propose to you, my friends, that deep down, inside, if you encourage, cultivate, and practice finding that organic, innate, natural, inborn place of stillness and peace, whether you're suffering through this epidemic in the lap of luxury, whether you're suffering through this epidemic in the mediocre middle class, whether you're suffering through this epidemic bordering on homelessness or beyond. I'm not disrespecting anyone's suffering. I am saying the healing to a good chunk of that suffering, barring all the obvious things that cannot be dealt with alone, with meditation alone. But even those things are helped and eased. It's like a salve. If you go within, stop judging yourself, stop judging everything else, stop judging everyone else, stop judging the world and the conditions you find it in, set aside your mental tools and sit within yourself, as far inside, as deep within, as far behind the history of your mind as you can get to, and cultivate, practice that stillness. God itself, herself, himself will speak to you without words. And I assure you, in a way that is not self-aggrandizing, sociopathic, profiteering, violent, judgmental of others, but rather healing, cathartic, transformative, challenging. It's there. Don't take my word for it. It's not about believing my words. It's not about believing my opinion on this. It's about saying, I was a cynic, I didn't claim to know, and I tested the theory by looking at a bunch of different people's instructions on how to meditate and going, okay, the most interesting claim from me to you, a little shortcut. And I still say go do your research. Go get a bunch of different books on meditation from the library for free. Don't just Google meditation and get tired after 7 minutes. That's what most people who claim to have researched their bullshit actually did, I think. Just an opinion. I could be wrong. I know some people have gone crazy. And there's people out there who've actually really been as close as possible to like breaking into the archives at Rome, right? That's a thing I'd love to do. Let's bust that open. But that's a subject for another day, friends. As always, I could be wrong. But, and mind you, this is the scary part. It's scarier than a run on toilet paper, in my opinion. We're engineers at heart. To quote Mr. Cuomo from the other day, mind you, I will not be surprised if he makes a run at the White House the very next cycle after this one. And if he does, although, I have a weird, complicated, non-participatory relationship with electoral voting, I also think I should be free to have and express an opinion about why y'all should consider one particular person or not. Do what you want. No one ever takes my advice. But in this moment, to bring it all back and wind it up, because it's supposed to be short, like samurai swords slicing through a watermelon, which this has not been. I could be wrong, but what if, in spite of, to spite, in fact, whatever nefarious plan may or may not be going on behind the current socioeconomic situation that we find ourselves stress-eating through, despite all that, in fact, in a way to show up mankind's ego and maybe give man's ego a bit of its own comeuppance, God is working through these circumstances. And whatever God you believe in, trust me, at some point or another, they educated their believers in practices that you might as well call meditation, whether or not that tradition calls them that. It's there. Look up Christian mysticism. Look up the Gnostic tradition. Look up, in the Muslim world, there's a Rumi. That man's wisdom in poetry and just the act of speaking to God as a poet, it's magical. I digress. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, right? and it means nothing except that you get the benefits of meditating. If I'm right, what if I'm right? What if myself and all those others inclined? Because trust me, millions of people are already meditating. Millions of people, and I speak to this point because who knows, maybe some of those millions of people are listening to this show. Millions of people out there in the world have had a rich, long, profound meditation life and are now, under the duress of this intense situation, rediscovering, reinventing, and maybe even wrestling with the seductive ego trap of neglecting and or outright rejecting and or abandoning their meditation practice. And millions others are just really getting into like discovering a new gear. Oh my God, there's a different gear shift for meditating than this other one. I thought I only had 3 gears. Now I realize there's this other place. What does that mean? It's almost irrelevant because it's going to be your inner experience. And you have to go in there like you would go into any other new situation surrounded by other people. You have to go in there with, not with hesitation. You have to go in there with your savvy. You have to go in there on guard. Because deep within us all, we are all both the light and the darkness. Don't forget, in every tradition, somebody goes and wrestles with his demons somewhere, right? I can only really authoritatively reference the Christian tradition, and even that, many people would say, that's not so authoritative, bro. You can't thump out the chapter and verse no more. I'm like, yeah, I gave up all the numbers. It was taking up too much space in my brain. But raise your hand if you're, still really hyper Bible thumping conversant. But I'm not mistaken. All the important prophets in the Christian lineage of supposed prophets wrestled with their demons in some story or another. Yeshua Christos himself, as it is reported. Now, I'm not saying it's word for word truth, right? We can have a whole debate there, but I'm spiraling out of control, folks. Jesus himself goes and spends time in the darkness. Buddha himself sits under that tree and deals with the demons. We are being invited to go there by divinity because we are not alone in our suffering. All souls are suffering. And suffering in a way that, believe it or not, predates this current dilemma we're in now and is deeper and more complicated than this current decade's political mishigas. I'm talking about generations deep. Not decades, centuries deep. Spiritual trauma. We traumatized ourselves as a species a really long time ago when we kicked the Tower of Babel down and ripped away our living relationship with this living organism that we now pretend is just a collection of objects and that we reference to as a place. Don't miss the calling, friends. It's not going to come at you. Well, signs might come at you quite readily in your face, on your screens, and in the real world. If you're listening to the sound of my voice, it is not an accident. That's how it works. I humbly invite you, friends, because we just got through, if the trends are correct, not to spiral into other episode, this is supposed to be under 30 minutes, and I'm really coming to the neck of it right now. The neck of it? I don't even know what that means. But we just passed 2442, and I got to wrap it up. Something spiritual is happening, friends. Don't neglect it. Don't ignore it. And don't let yourself talk you and your other self, because there's me, myself, and I, right? But from the third person perspective, it's all just you. Don't let you talk yourself into giving up, neglecting, or abandoning. And if you stumble, friends, if you stumble, that's okay. That is part of the practice. Forgive yourself. Forgive the situations, circumstances, and or people that contributed to falling off the bandwagon. Breathe deep and renew. Some people fret because they're like, oh, I got to do this meditation for X number of days. And then if I screw up, I got to start all over. And that's a lot. Because some people prescribe meditation for X number of days. Like 9 days, 50 days, 130 days. I personally like 999 with the trajectory of like for the rest of my life. So if you fuck up or just don't feel like meditating one day, great. But don't let that slide into, never meditating again. Then again, if that happens, also great. Forgive it. And if you're just coming back to it now after having dropped it a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, it's like Alcoholics Anonymous. We don't judge. We just welcome you back into the circle and say, sit down and meditate. It's there. It ain't easy, but it's there, folks. I stand to you as personal witness. My gratitude for your attention, my gratitude for you guys tuning in. If you're new and you're just listening to this episode now for the first time, because it's the first time you've ever listened to the show, hello and namaste. By all means, jump around. I know that the titles might seem dated because it might seem it's really anchored in some momentary thing that was happening that particular day or week. But also, I spiral way out of control, right? As you might be able to tell already. But there's a meaningfulness to it because the things I jump to are all interconnected. So hop around or listen straight through from beginning to end or from end to beginning or do both. I recommend to some people, listen to a new episode, go back to the beginning, listen to an old episode. And then the next time you listen to a new episode, work your way from each end in towards the middle. Either way, I hope you enjoy, and I hope you feel the calling. It's quiet and it's subtle, but it's in you. And I hope you go and sit and discover that silence. And I hope you welcome the face of God itself and commune with it in that way that actually cannot be put into words and that it feels healing. And that at whatever scope or level that happens for you now or in the not so distant future, that you, as you progress on that path, have a confluence of auspicious signs and uplifting epiphanies and all the delights, all the beautiful evidentiary perfume delights of meditation, as some ancient mystic once put it, or I think I'm cobbling 5 different mystics' words together, but there is this indescribable, lingering, ethereal sensation that might as well be called an aroma, which it is not, literally. But I hope you find some comfort, some solace, some salve for the soul, some healing, some catharsis. And may peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart. And remember, what you do is not just good for you, right? Like when you meditate, you categorically get scientifically proven physical benefits. But deeper than that, my friends, if the spiritual theories all point to the same reality, then deeper than that, my friends, when you meditate, you help uplift the entire species into higher and higher frequencies and deeper spiritual healing. And while it may seem like something airy and ethereal and impossible to pin down, which it is, it's fundamental also. It preemanates the physical realm. To put it in time language, although it's be technically sort of irrelevant to put it in time language, but that spiritual health the esoteric, energetic layer of it, that tissue that is not physical tissue, it predates, pre-exists, it preemanates. The material realm extends from it. So work we do on that realm is meaningful here in practical ways. Don't take my word for it. Take a deep dive into your inner psyche yourself and into the research involved. Until next time, I have been your eccentric and often overly verbose host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. As always, friends, I humbly encourage you to look within and to consider that that is where the revolution truly will be found. We're going to talk revolution, friends. Let's talk about the revolution of the soul, of the mind. Wow, energy.